This season of Gypsy Rose Life After Lockup is starting to get juicy, and I want to talk about the last episode. We see Gypsy, and she goes over to her dad's house, and this is the first time she's been to her dad's house since she was like 10 years old. And she and her stepmom Kristy, her dad, and Ryan all decide to go see Gypsy's grandmother's gravesite because Gypsy hasn't really seen her gravesite in years, and apparently her grandmother and her were really close growing up, and she passed away when she was 10. And I guess the mom always said that when she passed away, she wanted to be buried next to her mother, and Gypsy's like, well, if it was up to me, I would have made that happen. I'm sorry, I'm just not buying that she would have buried her mom, whose life she took, right next to her grandmother if it was up to her. Because when her mom was cremated, they allegedly tried to send some of the ashes to Gypsy, but Gypsy didn't want them. So she ended up contacting her next of kin, which ended up being Gypsy's mother's parents, and allegedly the rumor is that the parents hated Dee Dee so much that when they got the ashes, they flushed them down the toilet and said she got what she deserved. And a lot of people have said, like, look, that just goes to show how terrible of a person that she was, that her own parents allegedly flushed her ashes down the toilet. After Gypsy was done visiting her grandmother's grave, she decided to go over to her cousin's tattoo shop. And apparently, like, it's a tradition whenever anyone in her family needs a tattoo, they go to her cousin. Gypsy wanted to get her first professional tattoo. She's been tattooed once before, but it was done in prison and it was kind of janky, and she got a K on her ankle, which symbolized her ex's initial Ken. And she went to the tattoo shop and she told her cousin she wanted to get this symbol and it's supposed to mean new beginnings. And she got her tattoo and she got done really quick. So Ryan, he was actually supposed to be heading back to Gypsy's dad's house to help him cook because they're having like a crab boil. And instead, Ryan decides at the spur of the moment he wants to get tattooed too, and he wants to get a rose on him to symbolize Gypsy Rose. Then Gypsy and Ryan went back to her dad and stepmom's house. They had dinner, and then they had to head back to Ryan's apartment because it was time for Ryan to go back to work. While Ryan was at work, Gypsy decided that it was her time to shine and show how good of a housewife she can really be. So she decided to clean out the fridge, she organized the closet, she did a whole bunch of stuff around the apartment that was needed. I was expecting Ryan's fridge to be horrible with the way she explained it to TMZ when that article came out claiming that one of the big reasons she left Ryan was because he was a food hoarder. And apparently her and Ken were just on their TikTok live the other day making fun of Ryan because he made a video showing off his fridge and trying to prove that he's not a food hoarder. And she was trying to say, oh, you know, that whole article was exaggerated. I never said that was one of the main reasons. But she is literally the one that sold the article to TMZ and gave them that information. Ryan was just living like a typical single man. Like, you could tell that he needed a housewife in his life desperately. He had like crusty, dirty old pillows in the closet. He had old expired food all in the fridge. He just threw his clothes on the ground after he changed and just left them in the closet. He was probably just using the bathroom and not flushing the toilet after himself before Gypsy came in the picture. And while Gypsy was cleaning, she suddenly got a call from her stepmom, Kristy. And I do just want to jump ahead real quick because I am going to go on a little tangent about what Kristy had to say. So let me just fast forward a little bit. You know, she cleans up the house. Ryan comes home, and instead of being grateful like he should that he's got a nice, clean, organized house, this man just starts freaking out because he's like, man, where's all my food? his stuff was all moved around. And I mean, I get it. You know, when you're used to living by yourself, you know where everything is, you do things your way. And when you throw someone into the mix, that just throws everything off. And I feel like he was being a little dramatic. Like, you know, on the show Hoarders, when people, you know, really bad hoarders and the people come in and clean their house out. When the people first come in and start making progress, the hoarders show up and start having a panic attack and freaking out and acting like they don't want to do it anymore. That's kind of how Ryan was acting when he showed up and saw that his fridge had been cleaned out. Ryan started going through the trash to find everything that she threw out, and Gypsy should have just took the trash to the dumpster, because I'm sure he would have forgot about most of the stuff that was in the trash, but he was going through and he's like, what's up with this food? This food's still good. But then he was also pulling out a bunch of food containers that she threw away, and you know, you need to wash those and keep those. And it kind of just reminded me of a funny story. Years ago, I dated this dude, and he was so freaking lazy. I didn't have a dishwasher at the time. The man would never clean a freaking dish. He wouldn't even rinse them off, and it would drive me crazy. And like one day I was like running around doing all kinds of errands, taking care of everything around the house, and I was stressed out, and I was kind of in a mood because I was just getting tired of him watching me and not helping out. And he was finally like, you want me to do something? I'm like, yeah, help me with these dishes. At the time, I had a sink full of dishes, and it was probably like a good 45 minutes worth of dishes. 5 minutes later, he just came strolling into my room, and I'm like, okay, what's up? Did you decide to not do the dishes? He's like, no, I'm already done. And I was kind of side-eyeing it because I'm like, there's no way you did the dishes that quick. And then I went and took the trash out later on. It was way heavier than it normally was, and when I went outside and set it down on the concrete, I just heard like all these loud clanking noises, and it sounded like glass and metal inside the bag. So I was like, okay, let me see what this is. And I opened it up, and the man literally threw away like 3/4 of my plates, my pots, my food containers, my silverware, my cups. And instead of washing most of the dishes, he just decided to throw them away. Like the pans, you know, you cook eggs on. It seems like no matter how hard you try, it's so hard to get all the eggs off of. And instead of trying to put some elbow grease into it and trying to get rid of the eggs, the man was like, this is too much, and just threw it in the trash. And needless to say, I was livid when I saw all my pots and pans and all this stuff in the trash. And needless to say, he didn't do dishes again after that, and I ended up breaking up with him not too long afterwards. I'm sorry, I just had to bring that up because when Ryan was pulling out the food containers out of the trash, that reminded me of that. And so now let me rewind a little bit back to when Gypsy was cleaning the apartment, and then she got a phone call from her stepmom, Kristy. So Kristy calls Gypsy on the very first day that Ryan returns to work, and Gypsy is finally alone at the apartment by herself. And she's like, hey, I just want to know how you're doing. And also, by the way, Ken reached out. And you could tell Gypsy was so shocked when her mom said that. She was not expecting that whatsoever. And apparently, Gypsy's stepmom, Kristy, admitted that she has always been really close friends with Ken, even after Gypsy and Ken broke up, which I don't understand. I'm sorry, like, where is the loyalty? I would feel some type of way if my mom was super close with one of my exes, and they're talking about how they want to get back with me. And Kristy is pretty much encouraging this and opening that door up for Ken. And Ken has been speaking with Kristy as of recently, and he told Kristy that the reason he broke up with Gypsy is because he thought it was best to let her go so she could find herself. He said he would have never let her go if he knew she would have got engaged to someone else. And I just smell BS. Ken first initially wrote to Gypsy after he saw her on the documentary Mommy, Dad, and Dearest, And I feel like just like Ryan, Ken was originally fangirling off Gypsy a little bit. And after being together for a few years, it got out that Gypsy and Ken were engaged. And after the media picked that up, Ken claimed that people were harassing his family, they were calling up his job, and the heat was just too much for him to take. So he just ghosted Gypsy and never gave her any explanation why he left her. And I don't believe that he left her so she can find herself. I think that is just so cliche, because if that was the case, then why did he go find himself another girlfriend afterwards? He was with another girl up until not long before he started reaching back out to Gypsy. And well, I guess Gypsy's mom and then Gypsy. And I feel like he just couldn't take the heat, and that's why, but he doesn't want to admit that, because Gypsy could just come back and say, well, if you couldn't take the heat then how are you going to take it now when it's 100 times bigger? And I feel like now he's trying to act like, oh, other people said I need to let her go, so he can take the blame off himself. I just feel like if he really cared for her, then why didn't he try to reach out to her before she got out of prison? It just seems like he saw her get out, saw she was filming for a Lifetime show, saw how much clout she was getting and how she pretty much got 9 million followers on social media overnight, and I think he wanted a piece of that. I just feel like Kristy wants Ken back in the picture because she's close with him. And here's the thing, a family member, especially a mother or mother figure, they can have more influence on someone more than anyone else in their life. I know I take my mom's advice and what she has to say more seriously than anyone else. And if she gives me input about my life, I'm going to take it seriously. So here's Kristy planting seeds and pretty much influencing Gypsy on who she wants to be with. So if Gypsy is in the marriage and already having doubts, it's not helping to have her stepmom in her ear whispering that Ken's single again. And Gypsy's stepmom said that Ken wanted to reach out to Gypsy, and Gypsy was like, well, you know, I have him blocked, I'm scared, and I'm gonna let Ryan know because we have an open line of communication. And she admitted that she considered not having an open line of communication with Ryan at first because she wanted to keep that door open in case Ken called her a week before her release saying, hey baby, I'm sorry, let's work it out and get back together. And she pretty much admitted that even after she married Ryan, that Ken would have called her back, she would have went running straight back to him. If she was willing to leave him before she got out of prison, then she'll leave him after prison. And that's exactly what she ended up doing. She said to her mom at the time, her stepmom, that if she was single, she would run back to Ken like that. And she got emotional with her mom because Ken was the one guy she truly wanted more than anything else. And when she couldn't get him, she settled for the next best thing, which was Ryan. And Gypsy said, look, I'm married, I have Ryan's mom's ring on me, I have to be committed to my marriage. But then she's saying, oh, well, what is going to happen when me and Ryan have a fight? I'm going to be thinking that Ken's single. And for that reason is why I think Gypsy should have never married Ryan in the first place, because she was just trying to use him as a rebound to heal from her hurt from Ken. But she never got over Ken and healed from her hurt from her breakup with him. So now those feelings are starting to come back. And I feel like she's probably going to keep that in the back of her head and probably overreact over something stupid like Ryan not putting a new toilet paper roll on when one runs out or something stupid like that, and use it as an excuse to leave Ryan. The daddy tried to warn Ryan, though, and tell her that she was impulsive, and Ryan knew that she still had a lot of unresolved feelings for Ken. Like, she literally told him that she had dreams about Ken the night before she married Ryan, and instead of Ryan listening, he chose to ignore it, and he moved full speed ahead and thought that, hey, if I just put a ring on it, then she'll be faithful to me, and that'll be enough to keep her. And we quickly learned that was not enough for Gypsy. Then the next morning, the camera crew shows up, and Gypsy and Ryan are talking about this fight they got in the night before. So apparently, Gypsy told Ryan, hey, Ken is reaching out to my mom. Ryan was upset because he feels like Kristy's pretty much betraying him and their marriage. Then Gypsy told Ryan that she got extremely emotional when she found out that Ryan was trying to, not Ryan, but Ken was trying to reach out to her. And Ryan felt some type of way about that because he's like, why are you getting so emotional and crying over your ex when you're married to me? I thought you were moved on. And I guess one thing led to another, and Ryan was like, well, why don't you just go be with Ken then? And I think Ryan needs to stop being so damn insecure, because saying things like that is just going to push Gypsy to want to go do something like that, especially with how impulsive she is, and she's already admitted that she's looking for any reason to go running back to Ken. And then they showed a preview for next week's episode, and it gets juicy. I guess they really start going at it, and she even had to pull out her phone and start filming him while the cameras weren't there, and she's like, oh, this is how Ryan is acting. And I can't remember why he was acting that way, but I'm pretty sure it has something to do with Ken. So I am looking forward to next week's episode. But that is it for this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think about everything in the comments below. Check out my lashes and cosmetics at accordingtoamber.com. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.